So what I was trying to do is delineate for each of the study skills homeworks that exist right now, or we might call them Conquering College documents, what is the core principle underneath? So if we think about practices versus principles, and so I literally just ripped off some of the principles that exist in that book, How Learning Works. But I think that's a good starting place, right? Like, yeah. So the first two are all about students' motivation determines, direct, and sustains what they do to learn. The more motivated you are, the better, right? So I have a lot to say about that. The schedule and calendars, there's actually two different ones that I see. And then so to become a self-directed learner, students must learn to monitor and adjust. Calendars are kind of like that in like a semester-long thinking cycle, because you make plans, you try them out, and then you realize what went well and didn't. And then the other one I was thinking is like students' current level of development interacts with social, emotional, intellectual climate of the course to impact learning. So those are two that are on my mind. But then there's another like theme that comes up, which is like every time we make a schedule of classes, it's a hypothesis test, right? Like you're literally you're like making a hypothesis about how much time you're supposed to use. And so really what I would actually say for those, both the weekly schedule and then the calendar, like the principle that I see is learning take time. Like that, or like, yeah, so I haven't sussed that one out yet, but those are some of the things. And then the other two, you see them there, right? To develop mastery, students must acquire component skills, practice integrating them, and know when to apply them. So the lecture note system, or like somehow figuring out a way to decode lecture notes in our own mind, that's the start of that process. But like really, really making sure that a student has a thoughtful process to do that, because everything else in the course is built on that initial like marination, right? And then the binder system was the way students organize knowledge influence how they learn. And this one actually relates to what you were saying earlier in my mind, Henry, about the academic plan, right? Because academic planning is actually a ton about organization, right? Like how do we organize that content knowledge in our brain, and how do we make connections between the specific courses that we're taking and the larger vision that we have, right? So how do we make connections between our motivation and the content that we have, right? And so I think that's a mix of motivation and organization. And so those are kind of some things that I see there.
Awesome.
So those are my updates.